Let's bring in ABC News contributor and retired Marine Colonel Stephen Ganyard for more on this. Colonel, how significant is this change in strategy when it comes to the number of Russian troops deployed in eastern Ukraine? What can 50 or 100,000 troops do that 20 or 25,000 could not?
Yeah, Diane, I think it's important to step back and think about what was the initial strategy that the Russians had, and that was to very quickly take the capital of Kyiv and to decapitate the government and to throw Zelensky out of power and put a puppet regime in that Russia could control. And so most of the effort was around Kyiv by the Russians, although they did attack other parts of the country, and they've had more success in other parts of the country. The Ukrainians smartly prioritized the area around Kyiv to defend the capital and defend the government. Now that the Russians have failed and the Russians are moving over to the east towards the Donbas region, there will be concentrating troops in a way that they hadn't in the past. So those of us who failed to believe that Mr. Putin was going to invade in the first place did so for some solid logic, and that is if even 150 or 170,000 troops deployed around the size of a country, the state of Texas, just wasn't enough. So one thing to be concerned about is now that he is concentrating the troops, moving, we've seen those long supply trains, moving them down towards the Donbas region. I think we do need to be concerned that there's a saying that quantity has its own quality, and in this sense, we need to be concerned that the Russians will concentrate troops where, even though their failures in the past may be apparent, they may be able to overcome just with sheer numbers.
Now, Russia holds significantly more territory in eastern Ukraine than it did around Kyiv. So, how big of an advantage is that?
Well, remember that they already sort of held those separatist regions in the Donbas. And as I said, when they focused on defending around Kyiv, they had to pull troops back from the south and from the east. And so what the Russians have been facing in that part of the Ukraine is not the full force of the Ukrainian military. So the Ukrainian military will also have to shift more troops and assets towards the east and towards the south. But what we've seen is that the Russians have been able to sort of carve out that land bridge, that strip of land between Russia that goes all the way across to Crimea. Before this, they had to take sort of an over-water route to get to Crimea. So a couple of things to think about here. One is that Putin needs to take as much of the Donbas as he can. Remember that when he declared war, he was saying that I am going to liberate the Donbas. And so he has to go back home and be able to tell the Russian people that he has conquered the Donbas and done what he said he's done. But then there's a strategic idea here where if he's not going to be able to topple the government, he's going to want to be able to take that land bridge to the south to be able to create sort of that strategic buffer between Ukraine and Russia.
And Russia has appointed the so-called butcher of Syria to lead its forces in Ukraine. Is that just a natural progression due to his position, or does this indicate some kind of a shift in strategy?
Yeah, Diane, it was always a bit curious that there was no central single commander in the Russian effort. So in most principles of war, unity of command is a thing, and it is very, very important, and you'll find that in most militaries. There's one person in charge that has to direct the battle. The Russians didn't have that. So the guy that they've now put in charge is the most senior, but he's already been responsible for that area around the Donbas. And so we haven't really seen much out of him up to this point. Maybe he's going to improve things. But remember, the flaws that we've seen in the Russian military are systemic. It's training, it's logistics, it's leadership. None of those things can be fixed by a single general. But we'll just have to wait and see whether he's more or particularly ruthless when he pursues things in the Donbas.
And Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says that he's still committed to pressing for peace despite the Russian attacks on civilians. Where does this shift in Russia's strategy leave those negotiations?
Well, it makes it quite difficult for Zelensky. He's looking for a way out. He's looking for some sort of a ceasefire. But when the Russians do things like deliberately shell civilians sitting on platforms by train stations, we went back and we looked. We saw those pictures of where the impact points at the train station were, and they were where the civilians were congregating. Those were precision weapons. They deliberately landed there. Nothing landed on the railroad tracks. You can understand if they wanted to take out the railroad tracks. So when things like that happen, these atrocities, the atrocities that are being discovered all over Ukraine as the Russian forces pull back, make it very difficult for Zelensky to sue for peace. And so it's a very tough problem where he needs to get his country out of the war, but he can't cede too much territory or give in to Putin too much.
All right. Colonel Steve Ganyard, always great to have you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.